Are you ready to transform your Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365 desktop into a fortress, safeguarding your data from the clutches of cyber villains? Join me on an exhilarating journey as we unveil 3 powerful shields to fortify your digital domain against data heists. Imagine a world where your precious data is locked away in your own personal vault in the cloud, far from the prying eyes of data thieves. No more headlines of lost laptops or misplaced USBs spilling secrets and incurring hefty fines. Take, for instance, the USB stick saga involving the late Queen's travel security details, costing £120,000 in fines, or the NHS computers auctioned off online, still brimming with confidential data, leading to a staggering £200,000 penalty. And let's not forget the lost USB in a car park, a tiny device causing a massive security storm. These cautionary tales could not have been mere footnotes had the data been nestled safely within Azure's cloud, shielded by the robust security settings we're about to explore today. Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 come equipped with 3 formidable features to lock down your data. Number 1. Screen capture protection, a digital cloak that renders screen snatching spells useless. Number 2. Watermarking, a subtle yet powerful tracer embedding the unique mark on every frame, traceable through log analytics. And lastly, we've got clipboard blocking, a magical barrier preventing data from crossing the threshold between your cloud kingdom and the mortal realm. So, let's prepare to dive deep into the mystical world of Azure Virtual Desktop policies, group policy and Intune to conjure these protections into existence. Enough with the lore, it's time to roll up our sleeves, weave these spells into our digital tapestry. Let's jump into action and secure our virtual realms like never before. Okay. So let's take a look and see what these settings actually look like from a user perspective. Okay, so the screen you can see in front of me at the moment, that has the watermarking feature enabled, right? So you can see these kind of little QR codes sitting in the background. And what would happen if I were to scan one of those QR codes with my phone, it would bring up the Log Analytics session ID, and then they can go in there and we can have a look and see what those session details were, who the user was, that kind of thing. So we'll go into that shortly. The second feature was around the actual screen capture protection. Now, I actually tried to record this, but obviously when I went to replay the video, guess what? It didn't actually record the video because it had screen capture protection enabled. So I've actually had to record this video twice. So I'm going to show you a video from my phone which shows you what the actual user experience is like. Okay, so as you could see there, when I tried to take a screenshot of the screen, it just blacked out the screen. Okay, so that's the screen capture protection settings in force. Okay. The last setting is obviously the clipboard redirection. We'll go into that bit more detail shortly as well, because Microsoft have actually recently enhanced the clipboard redirection functionality. So you only used to be able to just enable it or disable it, but they've introduced functionality where we can now be a bit more specific about what specific items you want to allow with the clipboard and in what direction. Okay, so I'm just going to show you very quick here. So demo here. So I'm going to go to my Notepad document. Okay, and I'm just going to type in testing 1 2 3 4 5. So I'm literally just going to copy that. So if I now copy that, and if I try and paste it into a document which I've got remotely, I can't do it. Okay, you may not be able to see it on the screen, but it's just blocked. They won't let me paste that document. Okay, so that's the actual clipboard redirection effect, because it's stopping me from copying stuff from the AVD session onto my local client. Okay, so that's what the user experience looks like. Now let's go into a bit more specifics about how we can configure all these settings. Okay, so let's now take a look at how we configure these settings. So first of all, we're going to do them via group policy. Okay, so there's a group policy template that you can download. You can see the link below. And we go to, once we've downloaded that, we put it into our sys file. And then we go to administrative templates, Windows components, remote desktop services, remote desktop session host, and then Azure Virtual Desktop. Okay, so this gives us 2 settings that we configure. Right, we can configure the screen capture protection. So I've got this disabled just so I can record this video. But if I want to re-enable it again, I just click enabled, and that gives us two separate options. So we can block the screen capture protection on the client, okay, or we can block it on the client and server as well. Now, the important thing to remember also is that if you enable this, and if you can't actually use the feature because maybe it's a different operating system or it's not compatible with your client, it won't actually allow you to connect to the client, right? Your connection will be denied. So it's really important that you use the very latest as a virtual desktop client. And as you can see here, it requires the Windows OS version to be Windows 11 22H2 as well. Okay. So if you want to use screen capture protection, you need to be running a very latest Windows 11 OS, which we always recommend you do anyway, because it has the very latest security features in there. Okay, so that's how you enable screen capture protection from a group policy perspective, and we can also enable watermarking here as well. Okay, so you can see here enable watermarking, and this also has some different configuration settings which you can configure. So I can configure the bitmap scale feature. I can configure the QR bit opacity, which is generally how dark or light it is, right? You want to get it to a stage where it's not too overbearing, because if you make it too overbearing, it becomes annoying for the users. So you want to let them know it's there, but not interfere with their day-to-day work as well. And what I also find as well when you do your testing, if you set this too low, you find it actually difficult to read the QR code when you try and retrieve the session details. So you need to do some testing just to make sure you get the right figure. I mean, 500 seems to work okay for me. Okay, and then you can also change the height of the QR code as well, right? And you can also see here as well, we can configure what content we want to retrieve with the connection ID, or we can do the device ID. Okay, so that'll be the information that we're retrieving from Log Analytics. To enable the clipboard settings, we can go into the same policy settings, but instead we're here on the device and resource redirection. And the setting here, we can set a group policy, which is do not allow clipboard redirection. Okay, so I can configure that, set that, and then enable that. And there's nothing much to configure here, but in the latest version, we can actually specify some additional settings. Okay, so we'll show you those settings now. So the new settings which you can configure via clipboard redirection for the additional configuration settings are these settings here. Okay, so we can say restrict clipboard transfer from server to client, or client to server. Okay, so we can be very specific about which direction we want to enable or disable, but we can also go even further. Okay, because we can go here and say, like, I only want to allow plain text in images, plain text images in rich text format, and also plain text images, rich text format, and HTML. Right, so if you only want to block specific types of files from being copied down, you can do. Right, so that's a really, really useful feature that a lot of customers have been asking for. So that's how we set these configuration settings by group policy. Now let's look at how we would do these via Intune. We can also configure these settings for the watermarking and screen capture protection using Microsoft Intune. So here I've just navigated to devices configuration, and then I navigated to Windows configuration, Windows components, remote desktop services, remote desktop session host, and then Azure Virtual Desktop. Okay, so first of all, let's go to the enable screen capture protection. So these are pretty much exactly the same settings as they were with the group policy configuration, but we're just doing it from Intune. Okay, so this will be for those devices which are joined to Enter ID only, or if you're migrating your group policy settings across to Intune, this is where you would configure those settings as well. So I can just do the same thing as we could do the group policy. Just click on client or client and server, disabled or not configured. Okay, so quite simple. And then obviously we can scope these policies to specific devices if we want to as well. Right, so next we enable the watermarking. So as you can see here, we've got two versions of watermarking, 1.0 and 2.0. As the setting says, this is a later version, and it's recommended to use this version. Okay, so here again, the same settings as we got within group policy. We can just click on enable, configure our settings as we want them to be. So I can change this to 2500, for example. Then just click the connection ID or device ID, and then just click on OK to save that setting. Okay, so very, very simple to configure, and that's how you configure these specific settings using Intune. Alright, so let's see how we will configure the new clipboard direction settings within Intune. So I'm going to create a new policy. Okay, we are going to select the platform as Windows. We're going to set the profile type as template, and then we are going to go to custom. So select custom, click create. Okay, so this is going to be my settings. So configure group clipboard redirection. Okay, description configures, so easy, configures clipboard. Okay, click to next, go to configuration settings. I click on add for my settings. So the name, so we're going to go here. Now we're going to set the name. So this is going to be session host to client, and then we have a description, settings, settings, the ORMI. So I'm getting this from the Microsoft documentation. So I'm just going to click that there, select that, and then data type. I'm also getting this from the Microsoft documentation. So I'm going to click on string, and then I'm going to put the data type as here. Okay, and then I'm going to click save. Okay, now we're going to go to next. So session notes, client settings, description, vendor OMI, and the value type string. Okay, go to my assignments. So my assignment is going to be to device groups or to users. Okay, so let me go to add groups. Let's see, I'm just going to select cloud PCs, for example. Okay, so I'm going to select next to that. To next, applicability rules. So assign profile if OS edition equals Windows 10 Enterprise, for example. Okay, so I'm going to select that, click on next, and then just confirm those settings are. So we're configuring the clipboard redirection. The description configures Windows clipboard, Windows 10 or later. The configuration settings, which you'll see on the screen in a second. And then I'm going to include my groups of users, which would be all my cloud PC users, for example. But you can scope these to devices or to users as well. Okay, or groups of users. So click on create, and there we have it. We've now configured our clipboard redirection using Intune. So let's see how we can configure these settings within Nerdio as well. Okay, so here I am within the Nerdio console, and what I can now do is if I go to my hostboard properties, so I can go here, go to properties, and then go to VM deployment. So here I can enable the watermarking. Okay, so that's just a simple tick box, and this means also that these settings will automatically get applied when the host are provisions, right? So that's quite easy to configure that there as well. And you can also see we've got a enable the screen capture protection, because that's basically just a reg setting which you can configure on the session host. So this is where we can configure that. And then we can also configure the policies as well for the clipboard. Okay, so if I go to RDP settings, I can see there we've got redirect clipboard settings. Okay, so this is just an enable or disable, but this is where we can configure this on hostboard level within the Nerdio console, which obviously then just configures it within the Azure side as well. Okay, so that's how we can configure it in Nerdio. There we have it. So in just a few minutes we've managed to massively improve the security of your Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365 environment. If you like the content, please like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next week for more content. Thank you. Goodbye.